to you about Michael Moorcock's Elric, the Dreaming City. This is a pretty cool book. They came out with like 5 or 6 different covers. We had them all here at the store. This is a very popular book. I personally enjoy this because I love anything that has to do with that medieval style of artwork and elves and dwarves and all kinds of mystical creatures. I love that. So this is a story that I naturally gravitate towards. But it's absolutely amazing. The dialogue is written really well. The interactions between the characters. If you've never read Michael Moorcock's Elric, this is a good starting point, as it starts off with some guys who are sitting there talking about a season of war that they're going to go into. And they're saying that they're going to need help because they're going up against many people. And there's somebody trying to assure them that it's all going to be good because Elric will show up. And these guys are very doubtful that Elric will be there. But they're having to trust this guy. And then it seems like it jumps into the past. And you start reading the story. You start reading the story of what had happened between the guy who was trusting that Elric was going to come back and Elric. And it's super cool because as you start realizing more and more, it seems that Elric has actually been banished from his people. He denounced his throne, whatever that throne may be. He's a little bit frail and sick, so he wasn't strong enough to be amongst his own people. So they're hunting him as well, and they've condemned him to die. But these other people, these human beings, are protecting him, and they appreciate him for some reason. But as the story unfolds, they end up in a jungle, and they're going through the jungle, and they're attacked. And then as they're attacked by these monstrous people, another huge bee type of god shows up, and he decides that his swarm is going to help them out. And Elric says, "You speak my language." So one thing that you're starting to notice is Elric doesn't know many people who speak the same language that he does currently, or an even older language. And as the book progresses, you start to realize that more and more. And the cool thing about it is they stumble upon this hidden village. And in this village, they find a guy who's scribed all over his body in tattoos. And what he says is, the guy speaking to him, nobody else can understand him except for Elric. And Elric says, this guy is like 1,000 years old, or 10,000 years old, if these tattoos on his body indicate the right meaning. And so you start realizing that this guy is like a library keeper. But as you go into this library, you have no words. There's nothing. Every parchment, every book is empty. And so Elric starts to understand that there's something going on, that there is a curse on this library. And so he starts calling out to this deity god that he serves and saying, "You're trying to keep something from me. What are you trying to keep from me?" And then it goes into this awesome story where it starts telling about the god says that in order for him to be summoned, he needs a sacrifice. But Elric says, "I can't sacrifice anybody. All I got left is my companions." Well, all of a sudden, Elric's sword starts talking. So now you start learning that Elric's sword is possessed by some sort of spirit or deity. And the sword starts saying, "I understand that you can't do this by yourself, but I got you." And the sword flies out of his hand and cuts off like 3 people's head. Completely random, because if you're reading the story, you weren't expecting that. But then you start finding out more and more about the sword. Well, the god comes out and starts explaining to Elric that he's weak and that the reason he couldn't summon him was because he couldn't pull the trigger pretty much. But all of a sudden the sword starts trying to protect the deity, and the deity starts explaining that the reason there's no history there is because of Elric. Elric was the one that led these people to their demise, and Elric is all of a sudden tormented by what he had going on in his life. And that torment is driving him mad. So the sword again jumps in to protect him. And then all of a sudden, the god starts speaking to the sword, and he calls the sword daughter. And the sword starts saying, "I'm no daughter of yours." So he goes, "Oh, one of my servants will fight against me." So there's some crazy lore going on here. Some stuff that I would really like to read into more. If you have not read any of the backstories, there's a ton of Elric stuff. Go back and pick it up. But if you want to follow it from here on out, this is a great starting point. I really, really enjoyed this story. So with that being said, I'm going to end it. This is a beautiful cover. The artwork is beautiful. The dialogue is great. And I really enjoyed this. I cannot wait for the next issue to come out in October. So we have issue number 1 here at Expansion Gaming Corner. Come check it out, and we'll see you later.